Welcome, visionaries. This is your host, the INFJ Visionary. I want to talk a little bit today about manipulation and the INFJ dark side. I was watching a video, it just came out. I was going to call it the channel, but I don't want to get too into it. I know the channel is run by an INTP, and honestly, I've got some value from listening to some of his videos before. I was like INTP insights, and we can really vibe with that type quite well. However, I've had interactions that were positive for many years go south in two occasions with INTPs. And I think at some point, if we go on long enough with them, that the varnish starts to wear thin, so to speak, and we become a bit of a dark mirror for them and their extroverted feeling blind spot, you know. Yeah, so in this video, this person was, pretty much describing how INFJs would use their personality skills to scope out how to get in with people, and this is totally something that we can do, and you can use this in positive or negative ways, or you can choose to be neutral, and we'll get into some of that, I think, a little later on as we're talking here, as far as my strategy, because of a lot of what comes out of using this sort of gift for manipulation. I think of Darren Brown, who does it, as for a living. If you haven't seen any of his stuff on YouTube, definitely check out a master manipulator at work, and he's totally an INFJ, I think. And I'm not saying he's a person in the dark side or not, but certainly a good example of that ability and practice that we can exhibit when well, I'll just be honest. The only time I've used it is I've used it on bosses when they've become like too dominant or threatening or pushy. Um, I only have ever used it as a defense mechanism, because I think to use it any other way is going to tarnish your soul. Yeah. Um, Also, yeah, I mentioned in a previous broadcast that sometimes we can have our own blind spots, and that is the sensing, and a lot of times that is being able to spot the actual real terrain of the situation as opposed to the map that we've created in our minds of the situation, which is what is most significant to us. And in some ways, this can make us, you can hear um, in some analysis of INFJ behavior, how cold and calculating we can be, and that seems totally at odds with the empathic nature of extroverted feeling. But it's a real thing, and it switches on when we're activating aspects of our dark side, and a lot of that could come out of, well, let's face it, why would you come from a place of darkness? It usually comes from grasping or fear. So, and not much good or happiness will come in your life from either one of those. Life is very much a choice between choosing love or fear. You can boil down just about every decision you're making to one of those two. Anyway, the INTP, INFJ personality exchange, it can be really deep, super philosophical, and the TI is a TI lovefest, and the ideas are flowing fast and furious, and it's intoxicating. And I think, like I said, I've had long-term relationships with INTPs to the point where you would think you'd be lifelong friends forever, but in two cases, one, I know what I did in that particular relationship with that person. They were basically a coworker, but we had some great deep philosophical conversations and knew each other for many years, and we're good friends. At least I thought so. But, I started showing some aberrant behavior that didn't make sense to him, that really involved, making some sort of rash decisions that were no doubt coming from my own fear and darkness. And once he flipped a switch and he judged me a certain way, that was really it. He was polite. And we would associate with each other for maybe a year or so after it. But for all intents and purposes, that relationship was terminated. And then the second occasion with an INTP was another, friend from work, so to speak, another very long-term friendship, very close, very deep for many years. And a lot of insightful and deep philosophical conversations about the nature of the world and all that stuff. And we still see each other, actually, so that's still something going on. And, that's a friendly wave and a hello and that kind of thing. Anyway, that's, some personal INTP experience, and I could see how we could be a dark mirror to them, and I think they to us less so. Like, I don't get all that excited about things people say to me. You can think whatever you want. I can tell you what I think, that having had so many close relationships with these guys, or people, I should say. And I knew a female, I think she was an INTP as well, and they can seem very eccentric, like Pippi Longstockings would be a great example. I think that's a total INTP in the female, version. Fearless, right? And incredibly smart. And INTPs can be and are. And the other thing with this fellow's video, I think he may have, like, not everyone who's an INFJ is going to be smart. That's what I started to say earlier in the broadcast here. We think we're smart. And I think for the most part, the type is inclined towards it being intelligent. At least we have a great, in my view, balance between intellectual ability with the TI combined with the ability to intuit things on a feeling level and basis, which comes from much deeper, vaster place. And that's what's sort of behind the image from today's video. That's, I think, a great image of us with the abyss of intuition, right? But it's so vast, we go up into the abyss, and I don't know about you, but one criticism this fellow has is he said all INFJs were the same person, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. In fact, in our earlier broadcasts about, subtypes of INFJ, I said, yeah, there's this, how many is there? 82 million, I think, on the planet or something, INFJs. That's how many different subtypes there are. The preferences they're set. They don't change in your life. But that doesn't mean that one INFJ is the same as any other. In fact, all of the INFJs I've known, it's illuminating to see what their preferences are for how they deal with reality, and that's about it. Otherwise, they're not like me much at all. So just at the tail end of this video, be careful if you find yourself using your ability to manipulate people to make things happen for yourself, because there may or may not be a such thing as karma, but I think there is, and I think it manifests again in this balance that we have to strike between love and fear. If you choose love, the world becomes a more loving and open and friendly place that is going to be more rewarding to you. And if you choose fear, then you're going to start grasping and manipulating things to your ends. And that's not good. You don't want to do it. That's called being a villain. And it's bad. So if you are doing, if you're doing it, don't do it, but do it if you have to defend yourself or your family. Absolutely. That's what it's there for. And just like in any war, if you do have to do it, stop when it's time to stop. until I come back in another day. Keep on keeping on, INFJ.